What happens when a nation fights for 2 decades, millions of lives are lost, millions are displaced, and suddenly one agreement changes everything? This week in history, on January 27, 1973, world leaders signed an agreement that officially brought an end to the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War. Not with victory, but with compromise. Not with celebration, but with consequence. Today, we're going back to that day, the people who shaped it, and why that moment still matters. The Vietnam War was more than a conflict on a map. It became the symbol of 20th century ideological struggle. Democracy versus communism, caught between superpower politics and a nation's fight for independence. It began in the aftermath of World War II, but escalated dramatically in the 1960s as Cold War tensions mounted. The United States sent hundreds of thousands of troops in support of South Vietnam, determined to stop the spread of communism across Southeast Asia. By 1973, the war had lasted nearly 2 decades, and more than 58,000 American soldiers and millions of Vietnamese civilians and combatants had died. The war had sparked massive protest movements around the world and reshaped political life in the United States and beyond. But then everything changed on one day in Paris. On January 27, 1973, negotiators from the United States, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and the Viet Cong signed the Paris Peace Accords, a treaty designed to formally end U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. The agreement included several key provisions: a ceasefire across all of Vietnam, the withdrawal of U.S. combat forces, the release of prisoners of war, the promise of political negotiations between North and South Vietnam. This was not a final victory for any single side, but a negotiated end to direct U.S. military involvement. It was, in many ways, a recognition that the war had become too costly, too divisive, and too damaging for all parties involved. For Americans, the Paris Peace Accords represented both relief and disillusionment. Support for the war had collapsed back home. Massive protests, draft resistance, and public outcry had shaken faith in political leadership and forced the government to rethink its strategy. Many Americans viewed the treaty as the best possible outcome under impossible circumstances. But others saw it as a retreat, a failure of American power. The war had exposed the limits of military force, and it challenged the idea that the United States could shape the world through intervention alone. Vietnam became a turning point, not just in the war, but in how Americans viewed their role on the global stage. The effects of the peace accords rippled well beyond U.S. borders. In Southeast Asia, the immediate result was the ceasefire. But peace was not permanent. By 1975, North Vietnam had launched a major offensive, taking Saigon and unifying the country under communist rule. Nevertheless, the accords changed the geopolitical landscape. The United States shifted its foreign policy approach. Countries around the world reevaluated Cold War alignments. Southeast Asia entered a new era of reconstruction and reconciliation. The accords also influenced international diplomacy, showing that even the most protracted conflicts could be resolved through negotiation rather than endless warfare. So, what does the Paris Peace Accords mean today? It's a reminder that wars rarely end with clear winners. It's a story about negotiation, compromise, and the heavy cost of conflict. It teaches us that history isn't only about battles and victories. It's about the people behind the decisions, the citizens trying to live through it, and the choices leaders make when pushed to the brink. From the battlefield in Vietnam to protests on U.S. streets, this event reshaped the world and left a legacy that historians continue to study today. If you learned something new from this episode, like the video, comment what moment surprised you most, and subscribe for more weekly history deep dives. We bring the past to life so the future makes more sense.